and get us somewhat started. Um, One of the other special things about tonight, other than being a launch party, an event, is that it's part of Children's Book Week. Sam was kind enough to launch his book in the same week as Children's Book Week, which is the annual celebration of books for young readers and the joy of reading. And it's almost as old as Books Inc. Established in 1919, Children's Book Week is the longest running national literacy initiative in the country. Every year, events are held nationwide at schools, libraries, bookstores, and in homes, wherever young readers and books connect. So let me connect you with local author Sam, is it Subity? I should have asked you before. That was one of my.
You got it. That's right.
Subity.
100%.
Sam Subity, in celebration of his first novel, The Last Shadow Warrior, a laugh-out-loud, action-packed adventure inspired by Norse mythology. Joining Sam in conversation tonight is his friend, Natalie Lloyd, author of A Snicker of Magic, Over the Moon, and the Problem Children series. I can't be more excited to have our first Children's Book Week event be for a local author and a debut launch party. Sam, happy book birthday, and Natalie, welcome. I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, Sam. Congratulations.
Can't believe it's here. Wow. It just feels so weird. I feel like I'm like basking and just kind of being at this point. It's amazing.
Oh my goodness. Thanks for letting me be part of the fun. I'm so excited to fangirl a little bit because I loved your book. I can't wait to ask you a ton of questions. I know your readers are going to have tons of questions to you, but start by telling me what got you here. What did your journey to publication look like?
Yeah, I posted a little bit about this on Twitter earlier today. So it's just a long journey. So, I used to write stories when I was a kid, read The Hobbit, and would read or write like fan fiction based on The Hobbit and other stories that I liked like that, and just kind of kept writing throughout my life. And I guess you kind of at some point you just feel like you're never going to get there, right? So I turned 20 and 30 and 40, and I was like, oh wow, this is never going to happen. But you just keep going, and I just so glad that I did. I felt like I had at every point when I felt like I was right about to give up, I kind of something happened or somebody came along that helped and kind of gave me the encouragement to keep going and to get here. So I remember my 8th grade teacher liked a story that I wrote and submitted to a contest. She liked it so much, and that just kind of prompted me to keep going and keep writing. But yeah, just kind of life, you just take detours, you have kids, and you get distracted by things, and here we are. So it just feels really awesome to be here. So
Oh, I'm glad you're here. And I'm glad you said that. I feel like society-wise, there's such a big emphasis on achieving your big dreams as soon as you can, very early.
Yeah.
Like if it's not happened by 20, if not everything great's happened by then, it's just not going to happen, which
Right.
is not true. You can be a writer at any point. I'm glad it happened when it did. So thinking about this book, I loved it. We talked a little bit when you were about to launch this thing, and it was really good timing because my husband's been obsessed with Viking stuff.
Oh yeah.
And then I got like on a Google binge looking up like the longboats where they're buried. Like I was on Google Maps I get really weird when I get on tangents like this.
No, I
But
do too with it. Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I bet. And that's what I want to hear about. What drew you to Norse mythology? Why is that where you decided to dig in and write? And I'll say readers who aren't into it are still going to love the book. I didn't know much about it when I jumped in, but I want to hear why it matters so much to you and what inspired the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I mean, you don't need to know anything about Norse mythology or Beowulf even though the book is inspired by the original Beowulf epic. You don't need to know anything about either of those to, I think, understand the book. But I just, like you said, that if you start just researching the Vikings, themselves, it's just such an interesting culture that's just, that they had like their 300 years in the sun, and then they just kind of just disappeared from the world stage, and it just was so intriguing, and I just kind of wanted to dive into that more. But it's funny because the book actually started as like this little kernel of a short story that I wrote for a magazine a long time ago about this guy that was sent to school and had to wear a Viking outfit. His parents made him wear this Viking outfit with the horns and everything. The school is middle school, and they had a longboat that they parked in their driveway and stuff like that. And just a really weird kind of story. So, but then it's kind of built over the, my brain was already kind of going and building this bigger world at that point, and just kind of thinking about the connections to, because around the same time I read Lightning Thief for the first time.
Yes.
It's so cool to see how Rick Riordan takes these like old stories and puts a new spin on them. And I was like, wow, I wonder if I could do it with Beowulf, because I love Beowulf when I read it in college. Like I was so into it. I was like learning it in the original Old English and like sitting in my dorm room on Saturday nights and like doing Old English and just like crazy. And so when I kind of made that connection, it just felt like lightning striking for me, I guess you can say. And I just wanted to, write this story. And so I got to the point when I was, almost 40, I was like, well, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. But
why not now, right?
yeah, right. I mean, those decades kind of have that effect on you of like reassessing your life kind of like, what are you going to do here? So I really got to buckle down and got into it. And I think it took me probably about 4 years in total, start to finish, to write this story. So, but I feel like, your first novel, most authors maybe are like that, where it takes them quite a bit of time to kind of get it right, and because you don't really know about pacing and characterization and all that stuff, and it just takes a lot of practice. And had some awesome critique partners. I think I listed every single one in the acknowledgements, so I'm sure Mallory was like, you sure you want this acknowledgements to be 7 pages long here? But I just wanted to thank you.
I'm a huge fan of Mallory. I'll say that. I didn't mean to interrupt you. We share the same editor at Scholastic. So, and she's awesome. I'm not just saying it because I know she's on here. She's really solid. So I kind of scroll, I follow who she edits anyway, so I can read their books, but I was really excited to read yours.
Thank you.
Yeah, and something else that you said that I like, sometimes I feel like when you take all of those interests, even the ones that may not make sense, and start stitching them together, that's when you have the most fun telling a story. It's like you put it all in the blender of your brain and it just comes out, and it kind of makes sense. So I'm glad you did.
Yeah, part of my process is just creating these like just grabbing images from Google, and then when I do these talks with kids, kind of talk a little bit about my process, and I kind of make a collage of images to help me kind of get started on the creative process. And so that's how I ended up with like this sea monster that plays ping pong. I just kind of had these opposites of like, these are random things that just kind of came, and I forget what I was even searching for, but these kind of came together. I was like, oh, that might actually work. It seems kind of cool. So I've actually got my little sea monster over here. My daughter's been trying to steal this from me. He's our mean sea monster over next to my Viking ship. So
yeah, I could take it. It's really, we were talking before everybody jumped on, and I have to remind myself on these not to get too close to the screen, because I always want to see what people are reading, what kind of stuff they have. I'm so nosy. So I'm glad you showed us your sea monster.
Yeah, and so I wanted to mention too that we're going to be doing some quizzes through the night, and I'm just going to show people real quickly the kind of swag that win as prizes. So one of the things I showed this on Twitter a while ago, I've got these gigantic bookmarks, sort of. They're made out of foam, the Last Shadow Warrior bookmarks. I've also got regular bookmarks, and I got these puzzles made that I kind of wanted to make this for myself, honestly. But I'm going to give some of these away as prizes too. So cover Last Shadow Warrior puzzles. So and maybe actually it might be a good time now if we want to do the first quiz, just kind of see how this goes. It's going to be easy. First question, just to kind of.
Sure, I'll go ahead and launch it. Ready? You should see the first question now. Does everybody see it?
Here we go. Yep.
Yep.
So which two stories most inspired the Last Shadow Warrior? So this should be pretty easy, I think, for most people.
Yeah, so we'll give you about 15 more seconds to answer.
These are such fun ideas, though. Even the ones that didn't inspire your book, like.
Can you imagine Hobbit plus Dragons Love Tacos? I can't imagine what that looks like, but like you were talking about the opposites, it just makes such intriguing, kind of like for art authors. Like.
So do you want to tell people the right answer?
So if you didn't get that one, it's Beowulf plus Lightning Thief. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to be, looks like almost everybody got it. And I'm guessing the person who guessed Dragons Love Tacos is just joking. Probably my roommate from college, actually. But yeah, so at the end, we're going to kind of figure out, who answered what, and I'll notify prize winners at the end too. So we've got 3 more quizzes to the end. So anyway, back to.
I feel like if you put a taco in anything, it like it makes it better. It elevates the story. So that's a great idea.
Cool, thank you.
Oh, so I want to talk about another character in your book. I want to talk about Abby. One of my favorite things about her is that she starts as a fierce warrior. She doesn't become one as she goes. I love that right out of the gate, you know that about her. Was that intentional? Is that something you discovered about her in edits? And kind of on that same note, when did Abby show up in your imagination? What was that like?
Yeah, so I mentioned the original short story that I wrote where the character was this Viking guy, and he was named Eric T. Red, and middle name The. It was just kind of this random thing. But eventually, over time, I just kind of was editing this character, and keep thinking, this sounds so much like my daughter, like the responses she has to these stressful situations and stuff like that. So it became this fierce Viking, and I didn't really like I think it's kind of, there's this trope of the character that has no idea who they are, and then they discover they're like the son of some god or something like that. And I wanted her to be kind of knowing pretty much who she is at the beginning and opening. So the book opens with this scene where she's like attacking this training dummy, and you really get a sense of, she's been working on this for a long time. And I wanted to kind of, I guess, show that she has been working for something. I don't know. I feel like it's almost like a metaphor for my writing, just like the way she was working so much and trying and failing all throughout the book. And then she finally succeeds. I was wondering whether I subconsciously kind of like created this metaphor for what I was actually doing in my real life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just wanted her to be, really, upfront. You get the picture of who she is right away. And she's trying to figure out how she kind of gets to where she wants to be. By the end. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, she was incredible. And I love that metaphor for your writing too. I feel like we all do that in some way. Even books I write that I don't think are about my life personally, they feel like diaries by the time they're finished. It's like I stuff little experiences in there I don't realize. So I can connect to that for sure.
And I remember Stephen King, when reading his book, his book on writing, he says most of his early books were actually metaphors for his life as well. So I guess maybe that's just something that artists, you'll have to talk to my other writer friends and see if they all kind of see the same thing there.
Oh yeah, that'd be a
story.
For sure. When it comes to Abby's world, you created this school, Vale Hall, and you put it in, is it the Minneapolis? It was the Minneapolis suburbs. Yes. What brought that on? What happened with the world building? How did you come up with it all and keep up with it all? Does it just show up in your mind like that, or is that something you have to work through as you do revisions? I want to hear how you did that because it was so cool.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no. So it was in Minneapolis because that's where it's like a third of the people in Minnesota are actually of Nordic descent. So it kind of made sense to have the school and the Viking Center be there in Minnesota. And if Rena and Pale are on, hopefully they got all the Minnesota jokes that I included in the story. But then so I had people ask me if it was, if I was inspired by like Hogwarts or stuff like that. But I really kind of started out with the historical research that I did and built the main gathering room where they eat, and it's kind of like a meeting center, was actually based on the mead halls from the medieval Viking mead halls. So the one in Beowulf called Heorot, it's just the kind of sweeping rafters, and if you look at the description of that versus the one in Beowulf, it's, there's a lot of similarities there. And similarly, the arena where they play Acknowledgements throughout the book is based on the longhouses, and it's actually nicknamed the Longhouse. So it's based on longhouses from Viking history. So I wanted it to kind of have the DNA of a real Viking DNA built into the school, and that's kind of where Vale Hall came from. And of course, the Vale Hall is just kind of a very veiled or a very obvious, I can't think of the word, but for Valhalla, which is basically where the gods of Norse mythology live. So that's where that came from.
Oh, I love it. That was really, really good world building in that book. I heard you mention one word that I mispronounced when I was reading, and I'm probably going to butcher the other word I have a question about with my Southern accent. So in the book, Abby wants to be, do you say Acer? What is it? How do you say that word? A
Yeah,
seer?
yeah. So ace ear it's like an ace card in ear. Yeah, that's how it's been pronounced a couple ways, but I take Neil Gaiman's pronunciation. He's the kind of authority on Norse mythology, so I'll just take what he
He's
uses.
the authority on all things. That's who I would go
Pretty
with
much,
too.
yeah. I think you're right. And then Canadaliker is the other one that's tough. You just
Yes,
got if you know
yeah.
that you have to pronounce all the letters in there, it doesn't seem like it seems like it's missing some vowels, but it's a real game from Viking history, and it was played 1,000 years ago. So I didn't make it up. It just is in the Norse myths, but we don't really know from those myths like what was the actual equipment or how it was played. We know that sometimes it ended with one of the opponents dying, so nobody dies in this one. I made it a little more middle grade friendly. But I was able, it gave me a lot of flexibility to kind of make up my own rules and make up the game. So that was fun for an author, I think, to have a little bit of a piece of something, and then you can make it your own and make it a modern game. So yeah.
Oh, for sure. I love that. So, talking about all of that action, you blended that so well with emotion and humor. This was legit funny. How do you blend all of that stuff? Does that come naturally to you, or do you have to work at that? What's your process when you're working on those three things? How did you incorporate them so well into the story?
Yeah, it's tough because if I could, I would write just action scenes like all the way through the book. Like I don't know if you probably remember the movie Speed, where he's just like on a bus and it's like action, action, action all the way through the whole movie. So that would probably just write an action book the whole way through. But you can't really, you've got to have better pacing, I think, than that. So I usually start with the action scenes. Those kind of come to me more kind of naturally to write those, and then going back and layering in like some humor and stuff like that. And yeah, it's really difficult, but I feel like that's one thing that Mallory really helped me get, because I just was having trouble with, getting the right balance of all that stuff. And then my critique partners too. I feel like when you have several people reading your book and you get feedback, like the same people saying the same thing about your manuscript, that's when you know you've got to change something. So it really helps to have, people really deeply reading the book and giving feedback. And a lot of my critique partners have just like very deep roots in like all the what do you call it, the craft books
Yeah.
that how what the 3-act structure of your book and things like that. So really helped me to kind of figure out the pacing right.
Yeah, and I think it sounds like we're kind of similar on that too, because revision is a word that used to scare me so much. I looked at it like starting over every time. But really, it helps you discover the story more and more. It's like you peel away layers until you get to the heart of it, until you get the right balance of all of that. So I get what you're saying. Again, more props to Mallory, the
Yeah.
best editor in the world for that one, right?
And then, but I think you get to the point too where you're revising and you feel like, am I just moving words around, or am I actually making it better at some point? So that's the hard balance of like, when do you
Oh,
stop revising
totally. Yeah,
and
it's
just,
hard to know when to stop for sure.
because I look at the book now, it's printed, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could change that, but I'm sure Mallory would kill me if I was like, I want to take out this page and put in another one, please.
I know. Eventually, she just has to cut me off. Like, we're done.
Totally. But I used to, the other R word that I used to hate is research, because when I was in school and just research, I just used to hate it. I guess it's a little easier now, because back when I was growing up, we didn't have the internet, and you had your local library, and you were lucky if they had anything beyond the World Book Encyclopedia for any topic you're researching. So
Yes, I
it
remember
was
that.
very limited what you could do. But now I just love it, because you can really, I feel like, helps me spark those creative moments. Like I found for little things like um, the Svethunthorn, that is the little flower that they're looking for throughout the book. Just like a little reference to it in just a obscure Norse myth. And so just kind of little things like that. You're like, oh, well, that's really interesting. I want to go after that and see how I can use it in my book. So I'm just totally start out with research now, and just kind of start generating ideas, keep my notebook about these are all the things I want to include. And Absolutely, yeah.
I love that. And that's a question I was going to ask you too, is about research. I think it's different when you get to research what you want and what interests you and
That's
dig
true.
into that.
Exactly.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And I feel like I don't know. Again, you get to the point where you feel like you're over researching and you're not writing, I guess, at some point. But part of the research I wanted to do, because I wanted kids to be able to connect this. If they're learning about Norse mythology or Vikings in classes, they can actually use this as a real, story, and they can see the connections. And so I've got on my website, I've got a whole facts versus fiction of Norse myths and Vikings about everything that I include in my book. For example, Grimsby is actually named after he's one of my characters. He's named after a town in England that was settled by Vikings like 1,000 years ago. And Vikings, when they moved into towns, they would actually name them and put B on the end as like the BY on the end as the suffix for all their towns.
Oh, nice.
Anyway, so there's just little things like that, I guess, that I just think are interesting, and I hope kids will find it interesting too. Like the foods, that I include a lot of foods that are real. There's the fish jello that I have in there that I have not yet tried, but have to try now. And
You have to report back to all of us on what fish jello tastes like.
Yeah, I should have sent you some, and we could have just eaten live here, and I think that would have been funny to see two of us trying it for the first time. But,
yeah,
but the Ebel skimmers.
I would have done it. I would have probably faked it. Like I would have pretended to do it. But yeah,
You could have brought your husband, and he could have done it.
He would have. Yeah, he totally would. So. Oh, so let me ask you some questions about craft, because I know there are some writers coming in, or teachers who might have some young writers that want to know these questions. And I want to know them just because I love the way you write. So what comes first for you? Is it character or plot?
Oh, I think probably plot first. I feel like usually when I have a story idea, I sit down and I write the first like chapter or two. And then I have to work on that character, like what I want that character to be like after that. But I usually kind of get an idea of a scene, I guess, first. And when I'm writing it, I kind of do this. It's like method acting, I guess, where I like to actually sit in, like when I wrote the scene where she's in the car, I actually sat in the back seat of my car and like crammed it full of stuff so that I could see what it would be like for somebody who's taking a road trip, sitting in the back of a car, and like what are they experiencing and what are they looking at and stuff like that. But I love to be kind of in the scene while I'm writing it to help me kind of visualize it, because it's just really hard. I think when I'm drawing them, I'm the same way. Like I cannot draw worth anything just from the top of my head. But if I'm looking at something, I usually can draw it pretty well, so you can at least tell what it is. But same thing for the writing. I think it's just so much easier to kind of not use the vision or the picture you got in your head, but really be there, and this you capture the smells and the sounds and all that stuff that you might not capture otherwise, I think.
Oh my gosh, that's such a great idea. I'm going to try that. I'm going to see, I use that, like I use research or method writing as a justification when I put like a bakery in a story. I'm like, I want to go research at a bakery, but that's much cooler the way you do it. So do you listen to music while you write, or do you prefer quiet?
Oh, it's got to be quiet. Unfortunately, I've always been like that. I can't study or do anything if I don't have absolute quiet, but I can write pretty much anywhere, just kind of a nice sunny spot, as long as I've got, either something to write on or, computer or laptop to work on. But yeah, just can't listen to anything. I don't know why, it's just distracting, I guess. So what about you? Do you?
Yeah, I love music. I mean, it informs characters and stories, but if I listen to it while I'm writing, I start thinking about the words in the song, and I lose my way a little bit. So I get that.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And
should we take another quiz question here, Hannah? Do you want to queue up another one here, and we'll see?
Yes, it's gonna launch in 1, 2, 3.
This one's a little bit harder. So what does Lodbrok? Chase Lodbrok is one, like kind of Abby's nemesis in the book. So these are kind of 4 options for what his last name means. And she actually says in the book what it means in Old Norse, but.
All right. Give it 5 more seconds to get your answers in. And end. All right. Do you remember the answer, Sam?
Yeah, so the answer is actually fuzzy pants. And we're not exactly sure why. He was named Fuzzy Pants because he's like this famous Viking from history, Ragnar Lodbrok. And they're thinking because there was a myth where he had to wear these pants that were made of horsehair to defeat a dragon. But otherwise, or they think he might have just had really hairy legs. I'm not sure. But yeah, you get random when you research Vikings, you find some really random names that they have, like Ivar the Boneless, and there's a lot of speculation about why he's called the Boneless, and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, so they think he might have had some disease, actually.
What your Viking name would be? What you would want it to be?
Yeah, I should have had you try this. So I've got on my website, there's a Viking name generator. So if you take your first initial and your last two initials from your first and last name, you can generate your own Viking name. But I think I'm something like
here. I'm very excited about that.
But I think I'm something like Thundersnoot or something like that. Sam Thundersnoot, I forget what it is, but
perfect.
Just funny stuff for kids to do related to the book. So.
Oh, I love all of the extra fun stuff that you have available. That's going to make it so much fun. It makes the story feel very immersive. So super.
I hope so, yeah.
My last question on process. I know we're running toward the moment when other questions are going to start popping in for you here, but what writing advice do you have for young readers? And kind of on that note, what do you hope people get from the book, especially young readers? What do you hope they take away from Abby's story?
Yeah, so I think for writing advice, I really just think reading is just read a ton of different stuff. And that's kind of what I did when I was growing up. I remember when I was in third grade, we had these reading contests all the time, and I won one month. I read like 100 books, and it was like Judy Blume and all this stuff that was available in the 80s. But I won this totally random meeting with McGruff the Crime Dog, which I don't know if you've ever heard of McGruff, but
I remember McGruff. Yes.
Yeah, it was mostly an 80s thing, but I was like so excited that I would get to meet this dog that I guess maybe I thought it was real when I was in third grade. I don't know, but obviously he's a guy that's dressed up as a dog. But yeah, just back to the question. So I think just reading broadly and a lot of different things, because I read pretty much everything I could find. We had a small library, and I just read whatever I could find there, and I didn't stick to like fantasy. We didn't really have graphic novels, but I read comic books, and I read the encyclopedia because we had our World Book Encyclopedia on the shelf, and so just read a ton of stuff. And that's I think that's the most fun advice too, is you get to, that's the one way you can become a better writer, is just by reading. So I thought that was it makes sense. But also for what you take away from the book, one of my big themes is Abby really struggles with what not being enough to be this Aesir that she wants to be. And through the book, I feel like she finds out that heroes kind of come in all different shapes and sizes, kind of thing. And I wanted kids to kind of read the book and see some see a hero in themselves, I guess. That there are all different types of heroes, and you don't need to be like this person or that person. You just need to be like you, and you're a hero like you are. So that's what I was trying to at least convey. But I think it's something all kids struggle with, is like just what am I going to be when I grow up for 10 years, or what do I want to do with my life for, I don't know if they're thinking that deeply at 10, but I feel like they're at least feeling this sense of what do I want to do? Am I going to be enough? They're looking at what their parents' expectations are, their teachers' expectations, and it's a lot.
It is, and I love that. That's definitely something I pulled from it. I love it, and even though I'm a grown-up kid, I think I struggle with those things too. So
yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah, it was a wonderful book. I'm going to ask you a few lightning round questions.
Sure, okay.
And then I'll turn it back over to BookSync, because I know you got questions coming in from all these readers who love you so much. So, favorite movie snack?
Let's see, Junior Mints, I think, would have to be my favorite. And I actually have there's a movie theater Slurpee in the book, so that's got Junior Mints, popcorn, and Coke as a combo.
Okay, that's a good one. Also, I approve of that one. I didn't know what direction you were going to go, but I approve of Junior Mints. If you could meet 3 authors for pizza, who would they be? And you can time travel and meet authors you loved as a kid.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know. That would be tough. I mean, Tolkien would definitely be on there. Yes. And I've often said that I wish I could be part of the Inklings club that they had. So they had C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, and then some other authors that are not quite as well known. But it would have been so cool to just, you know, be in a meeting with those guys and just talk about Middle Earth and going through wardrobes into other worlds and stuff like that. Yeah, that would be just crazy. But on the other hand, I would love to meet. So I'm in this debut author group where there's like 50 of us, or all 20 Wonders we call ourselves, and I would love to meet all those folks and just kind of have a big pizza party. And we haven't met each other because of the COVID, so we'd love to, you know, get together sometime and just kind of chat about books and actually meet in person. That would be awesome.
And then the last question I have before we hit these awesome questions that are coming up in the Q&A. If you were in an epic food fight against a Grendel, what food would you pick up and throw? And would it have any magical powers?
That's tough. Wow. I don't know. I guess I'd probably have to go with lutefisk, because it's just so disgusting, and hopefully that would, just the smell and the stink alone would fend them off, I guess. Yeah, because this stuff's pretty smelly. So yeah.
You need no other magical power besides stink. That's perfect.
That's right. Yeah, the magic of stink for sure.
Yeah. All right. You want to take a look at some of these Q&As that you got here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I can ask if you want, or you're popping in.
I can pop on it. That's okay. You still have a couple poll questions, Sam. Do you want to run those, or do you want to skip them and go question to question?
Can we do maybe one more poll question, and we'll do save the other one for the end?
Perfect. Sounds good. Yeah, I'm going to launch one more. Ready, set, go. All right, 30 seconds to answer your question. Oh, is it up for you guys? Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah. What do you think, Natalie? Do you think this is have any ideas?
Gosh, I should know this. Okay, can I make a guess? Tell me when I can guess. I have a guess.
Hold on. You got 10 seconds for everybody else to get the questions in. All right, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, and the polling. So before I release the results, Natalie, what's your guess?
My guess is skis.
Skis. All right, well, here are the results. All right.
So the answer is actually combs. So Vikings, and I mean, you always see the pictures of these guys with grizzly hair and gross, and they actually invented hair combs. So it's kind of a strange, but so we think the Russians and Chinese, or somebody in Russia or China, invented skis, and then the Vikings took those and westernized them a little bit. And then the Vikings invented, it's a game called Hnefatafel. I can't even say it all the time. Hnefatafel, which is similar to chess. So it's all kind of based on, pretty close to, what those items are. And they invented the sun compass too, which is now the magnetic, that was already invented. So.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, but they're a very, very creative group, and invented a lot of pretty cool stuff that I think people don't realize. But yeah, so anyway, Q&A.
All right, perfect. Yeah, there's I think Heidi just put a recipe for your fish. Is it fish jello? So thanks, Heidi. So those of you who are interested in cooking and eating it.
Books Inc. about making Nordic dishes. That would be
Nordic. Yeah, you can start that. She also put the link to your website on there for anyone who wants to get their Viking name. So some cool stuff in there. But to the questions. So the first one comes from Ellen, and she did enter it before a good chunk of your conversation. So some of it has been answered before, but I just want to give you the opportunity to kind of expand on what inspired your story.
Yeah, so I guess I don't know if I talked a lot about Beowulf, but I was just reading Beowulf, I guess, was the original inspiration. And I guess, just actually, I guess my kids, and they're listening right now, so I hope they don't take it as I wrote this about them, because I'll remind them that I did not write this about them, but just the same kind of stuff they deal with. Like, I like to watch them when they're, talking with friends, and just kind of pick up the cadence of the language that they use and different kinds of ways they speak and interact with each other, and just try to write like that. But I think this is essentially the kind of story that I would have loved to read when I was that age, when I was a little kid. And that's what so I set out to write ultimately what I would have loved to read back then too. which I think that's kind of what everybody does, I guess. But I loved Hobbit books, and I loved Dragonlance Chronicles and fantasy like that. And I just really, wanted to write that. But I think that the setting, I wanted to take the setting though and move it into the contemporary era. And part of that is because I think that you really only get about 300 pages to tell a story in middle grade, and the setting in a contemporary society, you kind of have a lot of stuff that kids are already familiar with. So you're not creating it all, like you're not doing the whole world building that you have to do normally with a fantasy story and make it like 400, 500 pages. But I think it really helps to kind of set it contemporary and then build onto that, because I think kids just all, and I do too, I love just kind of imagining these, you're in this modern world, but there's also these like secret things that you might not know about. And I think Natalie does a great job with this too in her books, where she has kind of these layers of magic and stuff like that that are unexpected, but it's really awesome to see. And I think that's what kids respond to. So
good, thank you. Let's see. So this one, there are a lot of people very interested on if you're going to have a sequel to this book. So that's part of this question. Let me read it in full, but there are more questions below about sequels. So I'll mark those as answered as we get here. But this one is from Joanne. Sam, I love your humor. Will your sequel, I hope there is a sequel, have anything as hilarious as the ping pong playing sea monster?
So I have written the sequel. Whether that book actually gets published depends on the reception of this one. So please tell all your friends and try to get the book out there. I'd love to write it, because the original concept was, so the original Beowulf epic has 3 bad guys. So I had planned it as a trilogy where this kind of maps to that. But I'd love to do that. And I don't know if I can quite get up to the level of the ping pong playing sea monster again. I loved writing that scene. I've had reviewers, I've read some reviews where they thought it was weird, but I think they were complimenting me. I hope. But humor's tough, because it's hard to, write something that universally people think is funny. So it's really tough. And then I think ultimately too, when you write humor and it falls flat, I think it falls flatter than most other types of writing, because you're, tried something, went out there and people just didn't get it. And you're like, whoops. So that's why you have critique partners though. So if they didn't get it, then you have to take that stuff out for sure.
Good answer. All right, and this next question is from Mallory. Have your kids read The Last Shadow Warrior? Did you ask them for feedback on early drafts?
Yeah, so my son was the first one to read it after I wrote it. He's read it, I don't know, I'll have to ask him, I think 3 or 4 times now. And my daughter hasn't read it yet. So she's 10 and she mostly reads chapter books. But we read a lot of books together. We just finished a couple of the Pendlewick's books. And we read Rena Heisel is one of our debut author with us. And we just read her Journey Beyond the Burrow, and she loved that. It's about a mouse that, goes on a fantastical adventure. So my son read it first. And then when I had first written it, my son was in 5th grade, and he we reached out to his class, and I think about half of his class read it too, and gave me feedback on it. And it was funny because the first page, I remember one of the feedback was he said, when is the action going to start? It was like literally like half a page down on the very first page. And if you flip the page, there was like an action scene starting on the next. But that was kind of like the interesting feedback about, what kids' expectations for books, I guess, these days, is they really want you to get right into that action. So, but it was awesome getting feedback. And one of them said it was his second favorite book of all time after Harry Potter. So that was great, encouraging. But I incorporated a lot of the feedback that I got from them too.
Great. Those are, I love those kid responses. Very, very honest, and high praise as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. Sorry, I was clicking to get some answers that were or questions that were in the chat, but let me see, what do we have next? So this is a good one from Kimberly, kind of bringing it back. You mentioned a little bit about how your kids inspired some of your writing, but are there any characters based on an actual person in your life? So, or did you just take tidbits?
Characters based on an actual person.
In your life, I guess I should be clear about that. Not just an actual person, but in your life.
not really. I mean, I kind of, some of them are amalgamations of people I've met, I guess, but nobody that's really like an actual person. There are definitely scenes, like so there's the flashback scene where Abby remembers doing the YMCA with her dad in the school parking lot, and that was actually from an incident with my mom when I was about that age. She was always threatening to embarrass us in public and get out of the car and sing and things like that. So that kind of was inspired by that. So I guess, yeah, there are pieces of things that that I have in there. And actually, I don't know if my friend Jen Fiel was on here, but I have the one of the Easter eggs I put in there is I named the library, FJ Fiel library, after her husband, who's one of my great friends, and he passed from cancer a few years ago. So he always was wanting to write a book, and so I thought next best thing was to actually put him in a book, and so I put that in there for him. So
I'm going to kind of step away from what's in the Q&A box because we had a really good question that kind of lines up with this one in the chat that I just found, and I'm sorry I didn't copy over who asked it, and it's jumping away now, but what character in your story is your favorite and why? And I might open this up to Natalie as well, since she's got lots of characters to choose from, but Sam, we'll start with you.
My favorite character. So last time I was asked this question, I said I tell my kids I love them both equally, and I've got to be fair and do the same for my literary kids too. So I love all the different pieces of them, and I think that I got, like, there are maybe pieces of me in each of them, like the Grimsby who doesn't like to be serious and is like a kind of a rule breaker but with a good heart, and then Gwyn, who's like very serious, and she's just very studious and wants to get A's all the time. I felt like I was a little bit like that too. And then Abby, of course, with the fierce determination to just do what's right and to conquer anything that comes in her path. So I feel like just kind of all three of them, I really have different things that I connect with on all three of them. So yeah.
It's a good answer. It's a fair answer. I'll let you take that one.
All right. Are we asking Natalie the same thing?
Yeah, Natalie, do you have a favorite among all your books?
Oh my goodness. So first I'll answer for Sam's book because I loved Abby. She pulled me in from the get-go. She was fabulous. Oh, in my books, it's really hard to pick. I don't have kids. I just have dogs. I can't believe they're not barking right now. But I think it would be like trying to choose a favorite kid, because you get to know them all so well. So right now, my favorite character is a new character I've been writing. Her name is Olive, and her story comes out next year. And we have a lot in common. She is hopeful. She tries to be funny like I do, but it doesn't always work. And she loves ferociously and fearlessly. So I've loved writing her. And then I also loved Felicity in A Snicker of Magic. That was my first novel, so it was very special to me for that reason. And we had a lot in common too. But like Sam, I think I put a little bit of my heart in all of them. So.
Yeah, and I remember the Felicity really sticks with me. Just that scene where she's standing on stage. I guess you don't really even get to see it because she's telling you about it. And where she stood on stage and she just said the wrong word, and then ever since then, all the kids would make fun of her. And I feel like every kid kind of has a moment like that just kind of sticks with them, and just that embarrassing moment. So it was just felt so real. I was like, oh no, I feel so poor.
Oh, those are so hard to write. And thank goodness for Mallory, who pushes me to put things like that in there. Like, I don't know if you feel that way. Sometimes it's hard to relive through your books those things that are extra hard, but they make it better. So
for sure.
Let me see. I'm just trying. Now we've got so many good questions. I'm just trying to figure out which ones to ask next. Let's see. All right. Here, we'll just go with Ellen's question. So Ellen asked, were you always interested in writing middle grade, or had you started down a different path in the beginning?
Yeah, actually, let's see. I guess my first stuff I wrote when I was in my 20s maybe was like adult. I just figured that as an adult, you write adult stuff. Because you don't really, when I was little, I read Judy Blume and Tolkien and those kind of authors. They just seemed like mythical figures, and like, there's no way I could even be one of those. And then when I got into, writing when my kids were born, we were reading probably at least 500 picture books a week, it felt like. And so I started writing some picture books back then. I never really funny picture of my son. Actually, he inspired one of my picture books called How Do You Watch You? And so when I was taking a picture of him, he actually sneezed at the camera, and I've got actually captured the photo of him in mid sneeze, and he's like spraying me. And so this kind of like, people ask me where I get my inspiration from, and like sometimes it hits you actually right in the face. In this case, so it was like my first picture book I ever wrote, and I've read several of those since then. But then yeah, I moved on. I've written some chapter books too, and it's just kind of the whole range. And I feel like YA is probably beyond me. It kind of gets into issues that I don't really want to. I feel like middle grade and chapter books are kind of a fun sweet spot. So
very nice. Well, we do have one question from Rachel, wondering what you're working on right now. Can you talk a little bit about that, or is it hush hush?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm just working on, I'm always kind of working on multiple things at the same time, it feels like. And maybe Natalie, you're like this too, where you've kind of have to write different things just to keep it interesting for yourself. Because if you're stuck on one idea, then it just kind of, you hit a wall and then you're done, you just hit a wall, and what do you do? So I've got multiple stories that I've got going, and both the chapter book area and the middle grade area, to kind of see what flies. And one of them is a sci-fi, which, you know, is unfortunate. It's hard to sell sci-fi in this market, which I feel like my son would read every single sci-fi that people would publish right now. But it's, I don't know, Hannah, if you've seen this too with the Books Inc., if it's just hard to sell sci-fi too, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about it, and a lot of the middle grade books are fantasy, like they would be considered fantasy instead of sci-fi. So yeah, it's not flooded, that's for sure. So
yeah,
but everything has its time. So right now we're in fantasy. So you get that book out there and start selling it to the publishers. They'll pick up on that. It's like, oh, it's sci-fi time. Or
yeah, right.
Right.
And horror, I guess, is an up and coming thing too. So I actually have a horror book that I'm kind of working on too. So
yeah, it'll come back in. It'll come back into phases. So you just got to catch it at the right turn. All right, we do have a few questions on craft, and so I'll ask those next since we're kind of talking about it.
Sure.
Rena wants to know if you outline your stories or do you write on the fly, and we'll open this one up to Natalie as well.
Yeah, so for me, so I mentioned before, I usually start out a story with writing a chapter or two, and that kind of gets me going, and then I kind of do chapter titles beyond that. So like I knew a general idea of like this chapter there was a food fight. That's the chapter title or something like that. So I know kind of have these signposts along the way, and I know where I'm going. But I really kind of think about it as kind of like a road trip where you kind of know where you're going in the end, and you have like waypoints along the way. But if there's a fun detour, like I remember we were driving across the country with my family, and we saw a sign for Christmas, Indiana. So we just weren't planning it. We took this 2-hour detour to see Christmas, Indiana, because it's just, how can you, or Santa Claus, Indiana, I'm sorry. Like, how can you pass that up? But I feel like writing's the same way. You just kind of, something just sounds really cool and you want to try to explore that. So I don't want to stick to just a strict outline. And so it seems to work for me. And Natalie, I'd love to hear what you have to say about that too.
So for me, it usually starts with a character. Even if I have a good idea for a story, it's like I follow a character in my imagination and see where they go and what they do. It's one scene that pops into my mind, and usually that's the first scene I write. It might not be the first one. It might not even end up in the story. I don't know if you experienced that with this one. Not every scene you write ends up in the final book. But that's when I start. And then kind of similar to you, I look for those keystone images. I think about the things I know I'm excited to write about, and I write those down. And then I kind of fill in a loose outline from there that gets a little more detailed with each revision. I find as I go along, that gives me a little bit more freedom to play with the parts I want to play with. But it starts to get more clear for me the further along I go. At first, I'm kind of like that. I like to be surprised. I don't want it to be too planned out, so I can follow the character and see what they do, if that makes sense.
And it sounds like you don't write chapters necessarily in order. Then you can write like the end chapter or middle.
Sometimes I do. Yeah, before, with this one, I tried to do mostly in order. This one I'm working on now, that's just kind of how it flowed. But I've done the last chapter very early on before. So sometimes it kind of bounces around a little bit. It just depends on the story, I think.
Yeah. Like I have to, I guess this is the way my brain works. I have to write them in order or it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
But I have to also, if the signpost, or else I've found that my ending ends up way off from where I originally planned it to be. So I have to know kind of where I'm going, or I just get so distracted by the detours that I just end up in a place I didn't plan
Oh,
to.
totally. Same.
Yeah. Oh wow,
This,
it's almost 6 o'clock.
yeah, I'm watching it. Don't worry, I'm watching it. We've got a couple more questions that I think we can get. We got 2 that can be really fast, but there's another really good one that Mallory may want to cover her ears for if she's still listening. But this is, I missed who the question was from. Sorry about that. But are there any portions of the book that ended up being cut that you wish remained in the book?
Yeah, and this would be interesting to get Natalie's impression of this too. So Mallory's got this great analogy of, so you write the book and make it as long as you want it to be, and then you put it on a diet at the end. So I got to 85,000 words and we wanted to get it down to 75,000 words, and that's pretty tough to just cut 10,000 words from a manuscript. That's like whole scenes. So I ended up having to cut a scene of, where they had an egg drop contest. So she's in a science class and they had to do an egg drop project and everybody built one. It was fun to write, but it really wasn't adding, I guess, ultimately to the overall story, and I felt like I could cut it. But I think I've got maybe an idea of where I'm going to include that in a future book though. So it may not be dead completely, but yeah, that kind of thing. You have to, I guess you always have that where you cut stuff.
Definitely, yes. I think for me, one of the funniest experiences I had was in The Key to Extraordinary, my second book. I had this character who drove a purple bus. Her name was Laverne. I thought she was super funny, but she did nothing for the story. She didn't move the plot. There was no point for her to be there other than I just liked her there. So I had to pull her out. And every now and then I imagine that purple bus still kind of floating through my imagination, like she's checking if she can be in this story. Still not there, so she drives away. But yes, I've experienced that as well. I see where Mallory says R.I.P. Laverne. Yeah, she had to go. It's always good. It's the right decision, but sometimes it's hard. It's hard to let them go.
You get attached to your words. But when you realize, when you're reading, like when I'm reading a book, I realize how many words I'm like not absorbing when I'm reading it. So I kind of think of it when I'm writing as a reader too. And like, I don't need every single word that I put on the page. I got to let go of some of these words. So I feel like you just have to get comfortable with not being in love with your own writing, I think so.
Exactly, yes.
We have one more question about writing from Colleen. How do you think the pandemic and your experience with the 20 Wonders has affected your book release and launch?
Well, one of the, I guess, good things is we can do virtual launches like this. Obviously, it's if we were doing this at Books Inc. in Campbell, like my whole family and back in Ohio couldn't even be here. So it's awesome that we can do this virtually and share it with the whole group, because we've got the 20 Wonders group is all over the country and actually around the world. I think we've got people in New Zealand and UK and all over. So it's great that we could share this, virtually. But it's also been, I think, harder just to get, connected with students, because I think it's, you don't have classroom visits, and hopefully those will start again in the fall. And I know a lot of scholastic book fairs have been impacted by those have been canceled because they just can't do them anymore. But hoping those get started in the fall again, because I remember how exciting those were for me to go to those when I was a kid. Yeah, there's been some good and bad, I guess.
Well, the good thing is you're connected with the school visit person from Books Inc. when we're ready. So I do the school visits and the book fairs too. So when they start asking for authors, I'll have you on my list to contact. Natalie, how's the experience been for you?
I think very similar. It's kind of a scary and uncertain time for everybody, and I miss being around readers. I still get to do Zoom visits and Skype visits, and I'm thankful for that, but I miss being in classrooms and hearing what they're writing. That's always so fun. But I think, like your story, Sam, and all of the 20 Wonders here, they're gonna find a way. Stories are gonna get out there. I don't think there's anything, especially a pandemic, that's going to keep them away from readers. They're going to find this book and love this book as hard as I love this book. So congratulations again. I'm so excited.
Thank you. Yeah, and book sales honestly seem like they're still doing well. I mean, books are still selling very well despite the pandemic. So
yeah, they're selling. We're here.
Yeah, right.
We're still, our doors are open here at Books Inc. So if you're local to the Bay Area, we are open. And I know independent bookstores across the nation are open however they can safely be open. So definitely look into your local bookstore's website and see if they're open or doing curbside pickup, or some are even doing like sign up for half an hour with a bookseller. So they're getting really creative to still be here when this is all over. So definitely support. And I guess that's a good wrap up. We do have 2 questions left that are kind of silly, not silly, but we're taking us off our track, but I'll ask them really quickly. So this one is from Ben. Who are the 3 bad guys in Beowulf, and which one is in book 2?
Oh, great.
Can you answer that question without spoilers?
Ben, I should have muted him, I think, at the beginning, but yeah, I can't tell. I can't say.
We're ignoring
you can read
Ben.
the whole book is 100 pages long, so if he wants to read it, he can go read it.
Yeah, so Ben, you have to read it yourself.
Sorry.
Is what that answer was. And then we have one from Stephanie, wondering if you have Nordic heritage.
Yeah, so have kind of like a mixture, I guess, of the Northern European and Eastern European. But yeah, it's like it was something like 20% Scandinavian, and then I mean, it was all kind of mixed up because the Vikings invaded England, and then you got the mix of that, and then the French invaded England, and then it just kind of gets all mixed up. But so yeah, a little bit of everything, I guess, in Europe there.
Very cool. Well, that ends our Q&A, but we still have one poll question, so we have time.
Okay.
To go a couple minutes over, it's not going to hurt anybody here. So let's see, our last question ready, and I'm launching. Ooh, good one to end an event with. What was the last word of the Shadow Warrior?
Yeah, so there's actually two correct answers, because this is in honor of my son. He likes trick questions, so this is sort of a trick question, I guess.
All right, you have 30 seconds to answer. 20 seconds remaining. All right. 3, 2, 1, and we're done. All right. Do you remember what the 2 question answers are?
The last word is answers. So that's actually if you flip to the last page of the book. But then, so the trick question is the last word of the last Shadow Warrior is warrior, because that's the title of the book. So either one of those would be okay.
Well done, everybody. So at the end of this event, when I turn it all off, the poll results are going to download. It's my understanding of it, and Sam and I are going to work out a way for him to choose winners for his little gift giveaways, and then we will reach out to you for your shipping information when we get there. So be patient with us. We'll do it very quickly after the event this week. And if you purchased a book through Eventbrite, we're shipping those out after this Friday, when Sam gets to come in and sign and personalize the books at our store. So we're super excited about that. And you will get a tracking number in your email when it does ship out. If you haven't purchased your copy, you can still do so on our website for the foreseeable future to get signed stock from Sam. But definitely through the next week, we have a special event coupon. So you can get 15% off of the Last Shadow Warrior, as well as Natalie's A Snicker of Magic, which were the 2 on the Eventbrite ticketing. So if you did buy through Eventbrite, you also got the discount. And again, we'll ship those books out as soon as we have signed copies with Sam. Let's see, and I will be emailing everybody the coupon code just in case. It's Books Inc. Events, one word, but I'll email all that information out. Sam, Natalie, thank you so much for being with us tonight and helping us launch Children's Book Week. It's always fun to pack a week full of kid lit authors. So thank you so much for being our first event, and congratulations, Sam. I'm excited to share your book with our librarians and our kids that come in. So we're going to be big supporters of you here at Books Inc. So I appreciate it. So before I say goodbye, I just want to remind people, since it is Children's Book Week, we have a couple of story times coming up this week, but we also have another middle grade panel featuring Joy McCullough. If I said that wrong, I'm sorry, Jessica Lawson and Rajani LaRocca this Saturday at 3 p.m. So you can register through our website, or if you found us on Eventbrite, you can do that there. So if you want more recommendations, it looks like a lot of them are fantasy books. So if you're looking for more fantasy in there, check out that event this Saturday. And again, thank you for coming out tonight and continuing to support Books Inc. and independent bookstores throughout the nation. And Sam and Natalie, thank you so much. And I hope you all have a wonderful night. And thanks for all the shout outs in the chat for Sam. I'll send it to him too after this so he can see everyone.
Perfect.
Sending him love. So thank you everybody and have a wonderful night.